time when so much is changing, there is still so much of our culture that has to be documented and kept alive. Who are the bearers of these precious living cultures? How do they pass on a knowledge transmitted through the ages? What they represent has survived colonization, conflict, marginalization, and yet they persist. Sila ang sisidlan, the living vessels that store Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride. Welcome to the 4th season of Dayaw. In the past 3 seasons, we have explored the fast-vanishing natural world of our indigenous people. We've seen how these environments have helped shape not just their survival, but the very cultures which allow them to declare and be proud of their identities. We've discovered how they use the materials and resources which may help build and unify a nation. In the season of Dayaw, we meet the culture bearers, men and women who have devoted their entire lives to preserving what is vital and important to their cultures, our culture. Their life work may seem so far removed from some of our concerns, yet they push on in the face of so much indifference. That is why they remain relevant to this day, and that is why their achievements must be recognized. The Gawad sa Manlilikanang Bayan, or the National Living Treasures Award, is a distinction accorded by the Philippine government to the finest traditional artists of the land. The search is conducted by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts and an ad hoc panel of experts. The distinction was institutionalized through Republic Act 7355 in April of 1992. Since its inception, the award has been bestowed on 13 traditional artists.
We have a very rich tradition of people's art, and this is really a source of identity for the Filipinos. Our traditional artists, sometimes called craft people, are the keepers of our soul, or the bearers of Filipino soul, and it's important to preserve their work, because otherwise we will have nothing to be proud of to the rest of the world. The intention of the NCCA in the initial search was to look for the most accomplished weavers, mat makers, storytellers, and other kinds of traditional artists to showcase the creative spirit of the Filipino. And that's why we really looked for those people, our treasures, that have been able to preserve our tradition from the earliest time to the present, unadulterated by commercial trappings or some modernizing influence that may not blend with our traditions. That was really the intention from the very beginning until now.
Professor Elena Mirano, an educator, researcher, scholar, musicologist, was elected head of the GAMABA committee by its members, where she served until 2015.
The GAMABA has been a very sincere effort to recognize the fact that we have a living culture, that it's not just a Western culture, that we have we have embedded in us this cultural, well, actually it's a bedrock of culture that continues to exist until the present day, many times unnoticed or unrecognized. But there is a need to recognize, because unless we answer that question, then we won't know who we are. We'll only know some layer. But the really deepest layer comes from the tradition. And so, in that sense, GAMABA is a questioning of the self also. Who are we? Why are we here? How do we structure our space, our time, our visual images? and in choosing what we think is the best, and it has to be the best. So we honor the best.
Umanya ng ayam, masing handang humangal.
The Gawad Manlilikanang Bayan has reaped a rich harvest of indigenous Filipinos who have exemplified the very highest standards of their cultures. Unfortunately, many of the awardees from the first batch of GAMABA winners have passed on. And here, precious footage, recording of their voices, their thoughts, aspirations of past masters, musicians, weavers, chanters, all were artists whose gifts to this nation live on, even in death. All who heard him play on the two-string kudyapi knew that they were in the presence of a great artist. The instrument that he chose to express this virtuosity was the most technically difficult of the two-string lutes popular among both the Islamic and animist people of Mindanao. Of its two strings, one provided the rhythmic drone, while the other has movable frets that allow melodies to be played in two sets of pentatonic scales. Scholars have described the music of the Maguindanao Kudyapi as mystical, delicate, celebrative. But all words pale when one listens to existing footage of Samaon Sulaiman. No explanations, no academic notes can quite explain the hypnotic and sensual quality of his music.
The late great Samaon Sulaiman, a fantastic performer. I was told by one Maguindanao who's from a different part of Cotabato that when Samaon plays, he speaks and you can hear what he's saying and it's so beautiful. He was really a wonderful artist on the Kudyapi. He really imbibed yung spirit of being Filipino. Kasi for him, it was not just his community. Although he lived in his community, he worked there. When there were other events in other parts of the Philippines involving GAMABA, he would go. He went as far as Kalinga.
The idea of artists in our culture, in our traditional culture, is not a narrow specialist who does only art and does nothing else. Samaon Sulaiman is different because he was not just an artist. Nowadays, he was a complete person. His being an artist, his being a Kudyapi performer, did not prevent him from cultivating his other levels of being. In fact, he was a good father, he was a farmer, he was an imam, in other words, a Muslim priest. At the same time, he was the favorite barber in his town. In our traditional culture, we have a holistic notion of being, holistic notion of a person. You could invite him anywhere, he would appear, and he will be honoring you with his presence in whatever occasion. Until now, I cannot understand how the Maguindanao, especially Samaon Sulaiman, could tell stories using his instrument.
Sa kasalukuyan, ang Pilipinas ay tahanan ng mahigit 100 grupo ng katutubong Filipino sa bisa ng Batas Republika 8371 o ang Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. Kinikilala ang karapatan ng mga katutubo sa kanilang lupaing ninuno. Gayon din ang kanilang karapatan sa sariling pamamahala at kapangyarihan. Ang karapatan nila sa isang makatarungang lipunan at ang pagbuo nila sa sariling kalinangan. Ang pagpapahalaga sa karapatang katutubo ay pagyakap sa ating pagka-Filipino. Isang mensahe ngayong buwan ng katutubong Filipino mula sa PTV. vibes ba kamo? Sagot namin ang umaga ninyo. Mula sa balitaan,
Makakakwentuhan natin ngayong umaga.
bagong kaalaman,
Hoping for the success.
hanggang sa Unli Chikahan. Kasama ang RSP Morning Barkada. Rise and Shine Pilipinas. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 ng umaga. Dito lang sa PTV.
Samaon Sulaiman was not just a musician or soloist. He was a virtuoso, a man whose gift of interpretation elevated his musicianship to a realm where both tradition and self-expression meet to create art. I think the same can be said of the other deceased GAMABA awardees, whatever their fields. Chanter of epics and storyteller from the Macagua Valley in Palawan, Masino Intaray was also a poet and musician. In 1993, just as he was about to be declared among the first recipients of the GAMABA distinction, he was recorded in the forest of Brooks Point, where he chanted a portion of a Palawanon epic. He also demonstrated his skill at reciting the lyrical poem Kulilal, as well as a bagit, verse inspired by the images and animals of his forest home. Then, together with his friends, he played on the basal ensemble, a mix of large and small agong, accompanied by the gimbal or tubular drum, to the joy of the villagers. Complementing the music was the dancing of the women, their feet beating out complementary rhythms on the bamboo floor of the community house.
Masino Intaray of Brooks Point, who was a storyteller and a musician. He was able to preserve the very important traditions, the tultul, the storytelling, the sanang ensemble, musical ensemble, and unfortunately he passed away around 5 years ago. But his children are continuing the tradition in Brooks Point.
In our search for the exotic and colorful other, we often overlook the true gifts of a people. In the case of Masino Intaray, his gift mirrors the traditional Palawanon knowledge of the forests, the stars, and the cosmos, a universe he was at home with, a cosmos that was home to his people. Creative memory, endurance, clarity of intellect, and spiritual purpose. For these most valuable of possessions, Masino Intaray was found worthy.
Prioritize those traditions that are very important in establishing that we have a very high degree of culture from the very beginning, even before the Spaniards came. That's why we prioritize those craftspeople, artists like Ginaw Bilog, who was a Mangyan that really devoted his own life, to preserve as much as possible the Ambahan tradition in Oriental Mindoro, using the Surat Mangyan, or what we call Baybayin. And so this is really a tradition worth preserving, simply because in many other parts of the country, this Surat Mangyan or Baybayin is no longer used.
Ginaw Bilog, a Hanunuo Mangyan from Mansalay, Oriental Mindoro, grew up still hearing the ambahan poetry used by his community to express love, traditional wisdom, sage advice, common courtesies, and humor. The 7-syllable lines conveyed messages through the use of metaphor and creative images. He also grew up using the Surat Mangyan, the pre-colonial syllabary that links the Mangyan to other Southeast Asian cultures. His mastery of this difficult form and his desire to revive and popularize it among the young Mangyan made him worthy of the GAMABA distinction. Today, the heritage that Ginaw Bilog helped revive is carried on by his family, his children, who are his most ardent students. It doesn't seem surprising that the first batch of female GAMABA awardees were weavers. Weaving is, after all, an art associated with women. The skill of these GAMABA winners covered difficult techniques such as weaving in abaka ikat, silk, or even natural fibers. Today, among the Tiboli of Lake Cebu, the name of Dulay is spoken of in awe and admiration. Her legacy as the first ever Tiboli weaver to be awarded the Gawad sa Manlilikanang Bayan extends far beyond her skill at weaving abaca fibers into tinalak cloth. Her mastery of the process of dyeing the threads and producing both traditional as well as contemporary adaptations of these designs gained her many students and followers.
Without any paper, without anything to copy, Dulay just ties design, makes designs. And when this is dyed, and woven, the designs come out. The tinalak is a marvel of design, intuitively done by the designer, Dulay. And the Tibolis are very, very proud of having her. In fact, they were so surprised during her funeral. Well, some kind of celebrity, more than what the Tibolis have witnessed when it comes to burying their high political officials. In other words, even the high political officials were not buried in the same grand manner as Dulay, especially during the necrological services. We are sad, no? But her legacy will always remain, simply because she made the Tibolis much prouder because of her creations.
What I do remember about Dulay, the legendary Dulay, is the fact that she had not only weaving virtuosity, but she was also a leader. She was a leader. Her school was a big school, and she had many followers, and she was able to train many of them. And I heard her once talking about what she had learned from the GAMABA and about the other international events that she had been brought to. And she said something like, I learned the value of education. Education is so important. And so she was talking to the younger people in her village, and she was saying, so if I were you, that's what I would invest in. That's why her school was one of the most successful of all the GAMABA schools.
Yung kalawi ro tinanay, bayo alakom jagonan hayu kagano mudu di dan ketaran da gubernur. Jagonan hayu kagano mudu na legal. Masa mudu. Kemun te kembe ho balik mesti. Pwede ka nga hanagi, unuhon liganawa.
Salinta Monon was a Bagobo from Davao del Sur. Just like Lang Dulay, she was able to preserve the identity of the Bagobo of Davao del Sur through her very intricate and very colorful weaves. She left a very, very good legacy to her children.
Although inabal, the abaca ikat produced by the Bagobo is not as visually stunning as a tinalak of the Tiboli. The dual tinali patterns are more minute and difficult to execute. Salinta Monon, a Tagabawa Bagobo weaver from Bansalan, Davao del Sur, specialized in the complex small-scale ikat technique.
Salinta Monon became the fast friend of Lang Dulay. They were best friends. They had a chance to meet each other when they came to Manila for the awarding of the GAMABA. So when Lang opened her school, Salinta was there. She was a quieter person. And I think very introspective kasi what I remember about her is she wouldn't let people come near her house. She had a weaving house of her own. She would be alone before she wove. And so, all the time she would be weaving. Walang pwedeng manggulo sa kanya. So talagang very introspective na tao si Salinta.
Serbisyo ng pamahalaan ipararating sa mamamayan. Diretsahang usapan mula mismo sa mga kinauukulan. Samahan niyo kami sa pagbibigay linaw sa mahahalagang isyong pambayan kasama ang iba't ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan. Dahil sa pagkakaisa at pagtutulungan, sama-sama tayong haharap sa isang bagong Pilipinas ngayon.
Disaster Watch. Alamin ang heavy rainfall warning system ng Pag-asa. Yellow rainfall warning. Pinapayuhan ng lahat na mag-monitor ng mga weather update sa inyong lugar. Maghanda sa posibleng pagbaha sa mga mabababang lugar at tabing baybayin. Orange rainfall warning. Mas malawak na pagbaha ang inaasahan at posibleng magka-landslide sa mga tabing bundok. Bumuo ng isang emergency kit at maghandang lumikas sa anumang sandali. Red rainfall warning. Inaasahan ang matinding buhos ng ulan sa loob ng 2 oras na magdudulot ng malawakang pagbaha at landslide. Para sa inyong kaligtasan, agad na lumikas papunta sa ligtas at mataas na lugar. Sa panahon ng kalamidad, dapat laging listo.
Two other weavers were also given the GAMABA distinction. While Lang Dulay and Salinta Monon wove in abaca fiber, the next two gawad sa Manlilikanang Bayan awardees spent their lives mastering different fibers.
Haja Amina Appi from Tawi-Tawi is a very humble person. This is one thing that you will see, you will realize when you look at all without exception, all the Manlilikanang Bayan, they are very humble. They don't have a concept of themselves as the source of power, because their concept of the source of their creative power is from the above, from a higher source, God or the great divine spirit. and they are just a channel of this creative spirit. So this is what you notice in Amina Appi. She's a very humble person, but she's very good in using her intuition to create from just 2 or 3 strands very beautiful mats.
The mat or banig produced by the weavers of Ungus Matata in Tawi-Tawi are renowned for their dizzying and complex geometric designs, the high density and surface sheen of the woven surface, as well as the amazing, often surprising color combinations. Haja Amina Appi's body of work was honored by the GAMABA committee for the finer details often overlooked by other weavers. They cited the straightness of her edging and the mastery of such complicated designs as the sasa and kima-kima. She was also an expert at all the stages of mat weaving, from the processing of the wild pandan leaves to the use of natural and commercial dyes. Her exuberant sense of color was also much admired. Silk, the production of its threads, and the weaving of these threads into garments and wraps both for men and women, was a highlight on the weaving tradition of Islamic Filipinos. Among the tausug, the pishiabit was a square textile prized for the intricacy of its design, as well as the suppleness of the silk thread. The tradition of silk weaving has long died out and is only recently being revived. But in the work of Darhata Sawabi, the colorful and complex design aesthetic of the tausug pishiabit lived on in cotton and commercial threads. Darhata Sawabi of Barangay Parang in Jolo was perhaps the last master of this jewel of Philippine textile. Never married, she managed to attain financial independence through the weaving of pishiabit, a woven square, 39 by 40 inches, took 3 months to weave. For her masterworks, she charged only 2,000 pesos apiece. This is the quandary that many of our traditional artists face.
Darhata Sawabi was a master of this piece of habit. You really marvel at the intricacy of the design, very finely detailed, very colorful. We're hoping that we will find somebody who is as good as her. Because we know that she was not the only one in her town or in her province to really practice this tradition. And I really one of the admirers of this tradition. And Darhata Sawabi's legacy should really continue.
Efforts of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts and the late Susan Calo Medina, we would have almost no documentation of this first set of Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan awardees. Sadly, all of them have passed on, but their gifts to the nation are immortal and must be acknowledged.
Nagtitipon po tayo ngayon bilang isang bayan upang bigyan parangal at pagkilala ang ating mga katangi-tanging manlilikha. Sa pagharap natin sa modernong panahon at sa samot-saring impluwensya ng ibang kultura, pinatitingkad ng kanilang likhang sining ang ating pagka-Pilipino.
It's very important that they be recognized. It's important in a society where we only look at sometimes materialistic things as parang indicators of success. But you can see how yung spirit ng mga artists, they come through, but they're quiet mostly. So you have to honor that quietness. They have a sense of self. they know who they are. And because they have mastered certain things, yung vision nila is very clear.
Why do we need to know about the deceased GAMABA winners we have featured here and the ones still living who will make up Season 4 of Dayaw? There are many answers to that question, but the one I want to ask you now is this. Has this brief encounter with the work of these Filipinos left you enriched, inspired, perhaps even saddened at their demise? They affect us in ways more profound than you can ever imagine. The sound of a kudyapi, a powerful chant, a poem, the gradually unfolding design of a textile. In this fragmented world we live in, what are these but frail threads that link us to a deeper appreciation of who we are and what we may be losing in our culture? These manlilikha ng bayan masters may be gone, but it is our duty never to forget them. The nation may have given them an outstanding honor, but in the end, it is their work that honors the idea of a diverse yet inclusive nation, a nation that hopefully will come to value Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.